Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are live and ready to go.
I see we have lots of people with us tonight, so this is our first virtual meeting, so you'll have to bear with us. The script might not be as smooth as I don't know if I ever do it smoothly, but it might be even less smooth than some other times. So let me just get to my script here. I'm going to call the meeting of Committee of Adjustment to order. I'm going to start with the territorial acknowledgement. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge with respect the history and living culture of the Anishinaabeg, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. We recognize that these lands are the territories of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, collectively known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the keepers of this land. Georgian Bluffs is located on lands encompassed by treaties 45.5, 67, 72, 82, and 93. We reflect on our role as treaty people and the need to live in respect and peace and show respect to the First Peoples who inhabited these lands and these waters. I'm going to read the recommendation for the approval of the agenda. I'm going to read the recommendation that an additional agenda item be added in advance of the new applications to appoint a secretary-treasurer for the duration of this meeting, and that the agenda be approved as amended. This is necessary given the vacation time for our planner, Michael Benner. So looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Committee Member Ladrasse, seconded by Committee Member Glenn. Is Committee Member McMillan in attendance tonight? No. Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't see him online.
Okay.
I also didn't receive regrets, so he could join us.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss him. So given that the requirement for quorum is 3, will that require me to vote on each agenda item? Okay. Okay, so we picked a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? That motion is approved. So I'll ask for a declaration of pecuniary interest. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest for this evening? Seeing none, if anyone realizes a pecuniary interest, they can declare at that time. So I'm going to look for a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes of the committee adjustment meeting held on February 18th, 2025. Moved by Committee Member Glenn, seconded by Committee Member Ladrasse. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. I'm going to read a recommendation for the appointment of Secretary Treasurer in Mr. Benner's absence. So the recommendation is that Carly Craig be appointed Secretary Treasurer for the duration. Okay, so we approve the agenda item. This is the agenda item. Thank you. That Carly Craig be appointed Secretary Treasurer for the duration of the March 18th, 2025 meeting of the Committee of Adjustment. Looking for a mover, Committee Member Glenn, seconded by Committee Member Ladrasse. All those in favor? And that recommendation is approved. Okay, we'll move to items of new business. DEV 2025-008, the severance application B27/24 and cancellation certificate B29/24, Marcella. This is a meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to consider the application for severance for Micah Marcella and Serge Marcella. Under Section 53 of the Planning Act regarding property being Concession 25, Part Lots 21 and 22, RP Registered Plan 16R4655 Part 2 and Concession 25, Part Lot 22, Concession 24, Part Lot 22, RP 16R4655 Part 3 in the geographic township of Keppel. Madam Secretary Treasurer, please go ahead with your review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There have been no requests for deferral or withdrawal of the application. Notice of this severance in accordance with Ontario Regulation 197-96 made under the Planning Act was given on January 21st, 2025 to all property owners within 60 meters of the subject property and to all required agencies. Notice was also posted to the township's website. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, you must make written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee. Only a person or public body that requests a notice of decision of the Committee in respect to this proposed severance may submit an appeal.
I will now read the recommendation. It has been demonstrated that applications B24-27 and B29-24 for Micah and Serge Marcella for the lands legally described as Concession 25, Part Lots 21 and 22, RP 16R4655, Part 2, and Concession 25, Part Lot 22, Concession 24, Part Lot 22, RP 16R4655, Part 3, Township of Keppel, Georgian Bluffs, are consistent with the Provincial Planning Statement 2024, conform to the County of Grey's official plan, and conform to the Niagara Escarpment Plan. It is recommended that the applications be approved subject to the following conditions: that a reference plan be completed and a copy filed with the municipal clerk, or an exemption from the reference plan be received from the Land Registry Office; that pursuant to Section 53, Paragraph 45 of the Planning Act, the certificate of consent be affixed to the deed within 2 years of the giving of the notice of decision; that pursuant to Section 53, Paragraph 42 of the Planning Act, the certificate of consent be affixed to the deed within 2 years of the giving of the notice of decision. Note, Section 53, Paragraph 43 of the Planning Act requires that the transaction approved by this consent must be carried out within 2 years of the issuance of the certificate, i.e. the stamping of the deed. The owner pays the applicable consent cancellation and consent certification fee at the time of certification of the deeds, that the payment of the balance of any outstanding taxes as of the date of certification of the transfer deed with respect to the property is subject to the application shall be made to the Treasurer of the Township of Georgian Bluffs. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Committee Member Ladresse, seconded by Committee Member Glenn. Could the planner give us a summary of the planning report regarding this file?
Hi everyone, I'm Madeline. I'll be presenting the consent cancellation file B2924 and consent file B2724. As stated, the applicant for these files is Questa Planning Consultants on behalf of owners Micah Marcella and Serge Marcella. The subject property is located approximately 15 kilometers north of the Cobble Beach and the East Linton settlement areas and approximately 7 kilometers east of Wyerton. The subject property is municipally known as 482464 and 482470 Colpoys Range Road. The site is surrounded primarily by agricultural lands and woodlands. The consent case cancellation pertains to a previous consent, B457-90, dating back to 1990. This consent had severed the 2 large parcels on Colpoys Range Road. An approved application for the cancellation of this consent will effectively merge the 2 parcels into one. The consent that follows the cancellation application intends to sever a small portion of the lands for residential purposes and maintain the retained lands for agricultural uses. The severed lot currently has a single detached dwelling, barn, and outbuilding, and totals approximately 2.94 hectares. The retained lot has a dwelling, workshop, and barn, and totals approximately 73.42 hectares. No new buildings or structures are proposed on either the severed or retained lands at this time. The subject application is consistent with the 2024 Provincial Planning Statement. The subject application will not result in new construction or site alteration, and no new infrastructure is required to service the subject lands. The official plan for the County of Grey identifies the subject property as being under the jurisdiction of the Niagara Escarpment Plan area. Section 6 of the Grey County Official Plan specifically references those policies from the Niagara Escarpment Plan in terms of how they reference different settlement areas and hazard lands. Natural environment policies of the County Official Plan apply to all development within the Niagara Escarpment Plan, except where there is a conflict between the plans, the NEP will apply. The county's mapping shows some presence of karst area at the north portion of the subject lands. Section 7.5 of the official plan outlines the areas of potential environmental constraint due to karst must be addressed prior to development occurring, and that development shall generally be directed to areas outside of karst topography unless the effects and risk to public safety are minor and may be mitigated. Since the severance will not result in any new construction nor site alteration, there are no potential risks despite the presence of karst topography. The county's mapping additionally identifies the presence of significant woodlands and a stream on the proposed severed and retained parcels. As per Section 7.4 of the County Official Plan, no development or site alteration may occur within significant woodlands or within areas of natural and scientific interest or their adjacent lands unless it has been demonstrated through an environmental impact study that there will be no negative impact on the natural features or their ecological functions. Since the severance does not propose any new development or site alteration, an EIS is not required. Further, small portions of the lands are identified to be within the Natural Heritage System core and linkage areas. Once again, since there is no development or site alteration, an EIS is not required in this case. Both the county and Grace Elbow Conservation Authority had no concerns or requirements with regards to natural heritage or otherwise. The subject lands are within the Niagara Escarpment Development Control Area. Although the lot configuration will change, alterations to the built form or natural environment will not occur, and no new sensitive receptors will be established. The NEC has confirmed that they have no concern over the application and that a development permit is not required. Schedule A of the County Official Plan identifies that the retained and severed lands are within the Niagara Escarpment Development Control Area, and as such, the zoning bylaw for the Township of Georgian Bluffs does not apply. The County of Grey Planning and Development Department provided comments in a letter regarding the application. The county stated that provided positive comments are received from the Conservation Authority, county planning staff have no concerns with the application. Further, the Grace Elbow Conservation Authority provided comments regarding the application and concluded that they do not have any concerns. GSCA has no objections to the proposed consent as it is not anticipated to impact any regulated features or natural hazard areas. And lastly, the Niagara Escarpment Commission confirmed that they have no objection to the application and that a development permit will not be required at this time. Based on this information, it is recommended that the cancellation application B2924 and consent application B2724 be approved subject to the conditions provided in the report. I will note that upon hearing the conditions in the report, we had an issue with eScribe, and it seems that condition number 2 of the report, it should read that pursuant to section 5345 of the Planning Act, the certificate of cancellation be affixed to the deed within 2 years of the giving of the notice of decision. Right now, it seems as though a condition 2 and 3 are repetitive. And that's all. Open to questions, and I believe Janie from Cuesta is on as well, if there are any questions. Thank you.
You might have heard me pause when I was at 2 and 3. It felt like it was repetitive, but I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't smart enough from a planning standpoint to really feel confident. So
no, we had an issue with uploading on eScribe, so I think that may have been part of it.
Okay, we'll address that with the support of our Secretary Treasurer when we get there. I'll now call upon the applicant or their agent to provide comments. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to addressing the committee.
Good afternoon. I'm Yanni Brewer. I work for Cuesta Planning Consultants, and I am representing the client here today. I just wanted to confirm that we have worked through the staff report, and we have also confirmed with our client. We are satisfied with all the indications therein, and as well as the recommendation made. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No members of the public have registered to provide comment. I will now call upon any members of the public who may wish to make a comment on this application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. Okay, last call for any public members who would like to comment. Seeing none, I'll turn to the committee members and ask if there are any points raised by the planner applicants that the committee wishes to respond to. Seeing none, if there's no further discussion, so as Secretary Treasurer, do we need an amended version of this recommendation? I think has moved.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I'm just double checking. I'm just double checking the report to make sure I've reflected the correct recommendation.
I think this might have been an additional change upon what we spoke about, Carly. So it might.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Did you want me to send you that text?
Yes, please and thank you.
Okay, I'll do that now.
So I think it amounts to what we're looking at here for the committee members is that section 3, paragraph 3 would read that pursuant to section 53, paragraph 42 of the Planning Act, the certificate of cancellation would be affixed to the deed. Is that correct?
It would be condition number 2, that pursuant to section 5345. That's the section of the act that relates to cancellation. Yes.
Got it. So I've got it wrong. So that pursuant to section 53, paragraph 45 of the Planning Act, the certificate of cancellation would be affixed to the deed within 2 years of the giving of the notice of decision. So I think we need a mover and a seconder for that amendment. Moved by committee member Ladresse, seconded by committee member Glenn. Is there any discussion on that amended motion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor? And that recommendation is approved. So do I still need to call for the original vote then, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the original motion as amended.
So the original motion as amended, we have a mover and a seconder, so I can call the vote. All those in favor? And that recommendation is approved. If there's no further discussion, I'll now call for an adjournment of this public hearing. Moved by committee member Glenn, seconded by committee member Ladresse. All those in favor? And that recommendation is, that motion is approved. Thank you very much. We'll move to the next item, Dev 2025-21, a minor variance application, A03-25 for Palmer. This is a meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to consider the application for a minor variance for Lisa Ireland and Rob Palmer under Section 53 of the Planning Act regarding property being part of Lot 8, Georgian Range, Keppel. Madam Secretary Treasurer, please go ahead with your review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, there have been no requests for deferral or withdrawal of the application. Notice of this variance in accordance with Ontario Regulation 197-96 made under the Planning Act was given on January 22nd, 2025 to all property owners within 60 meters of the property, which is subject to the application, and to all the required agencies. Notice was also posted on the township's website. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, you must make a written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee. Only a person or public body that requests a notice of decision of the Committee in respect to the proposed severance may submit an appeal.
I will now read the recommendation. Application A03-24 for Lisa Ireland and Robert Palmer, requesting relief from zoning bylaw 2020-20 to permit a garage on the subject property without a principal building. Satisfies the 4 tests of a minor variance required by the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP13. It is recommended that application A03-25 be approved, subject to the following conditions. That the construction of the garage and driveway and any site works, including destruction of trees, occur only within the development envelope identified on the site plan. That tree removal and below-grade work be limited to the area identified as the development envelope on the site plan required for the garage and driveway. That no tree felling within the development envelope identified on the site plan shall occur between April 1st and November 30th to avoid disturbance of possible bat roosting or maternity habitat. That tree removal on lands outside of the development envelope identified on the site may be subject to the county forestry management bylaw. That prior to any below grade works occurring outside of the development envelope identified on the site plan, further archaeological assessment demonstrating evidence of archaeological resources of cultural heritage value or interest shall be required to the satisfaction of the township. That prior to any site alteration or development of the subject land, the applicant shall obtain the required building permits from the township, recognizing the development envelope proposed, and that prior to any site alteration or development on the subject land, the applicants shall obtain all required permits and approvals from the County of Grey, Grey Sabo Conservation Authority, the township, and any other agency having jurisdiction. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Committee Member Ledresse, seconded by Committee Member Glenn. Could the planner give us a summary of the planning report regarding this file?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'm presenting the application this evening. Marilyn Cameron from JL Richards. Application A0325 for Lisa Ireland and Robert Palmer seeks relief from section 5.1.1 of the Township Zoning Bylaw to allow for a garage to be located on the subject property without a principal building. A garage is considered to be an accessory structure, and there is currently no existing principal structure on the subject property. The requested relief would facilitate construction of a detached garage and driveway. No other relief from the bylaw was requested or is requested. The applicant, in addition to their application, submitted a planning justification letter, a site plan demonstrating a proposed development envelope, building plans, and an archaeological assessment and environmental impact study, or EIS. The applicants also met with Township Planner Michael Benner for a pre-consultation meeting prior to submission. For a little additional context, the subject property is along Grey Road 1. The applicants also own the property adjacent to the east of the subject property on the water side of Grey Road 1, where they have an existing residential dwelling. The applicants wish to build a garage to store their vehicles as an accessory structure to their dwelling. However, the applicants state that their property with the existing residence has limited space within which to site a garage and driveway that would comply with the zoning bylaw requirements and allow them to pull into the property with enough turning radius that they could front back onto Grey Road 1 when exiting. So they state that having to reverse onto Grey Road 1 would create issues of increased traffic risks. And for this reason, they've proposed to construct the garage on their other property, the subject property of this application, despite there not being any existing primary building at the moment. So for a successful minor variance, the 4 tests of the Planning Act, of Section 45 of the Planning Act, must all be satisfied. As discussed in greater detail in the report, the application passes the first 2 tests as it can be considered minor and desirable and appropriate for the use of the land. The next test then is whether it maintains the general intent and purpose of the county official plan or the township official plan. But the subject property is designated inland lakes and shoreline settlement area and hazard lands, and so falls under the county official plan. So that's what I'll discuss. There is an area on the subject property designated hazard lands, but the proposed development does not occur within this area. The subject property notably contains significant woodlands and is also in an area of known archaeological potential. So as mentioned, and as is required under the county official plan, the applicants also submitted an environmental impact study, an EIS, and an archaeological assessment report. Both reports studied the specific area identified in the development envelope shown on the site plan. The EIS report determined that development within the development envelope could proceed with minimal risk to ecological features or function, so long as development was limited to within the development envelope, that tree felling occurs outside of the time between April 1st and November 30th, and that the proposed development be subject to further requirements for tree replacement or offsetting measures from the county, should they require that. The archaeological assessment found no evidence of archaeological resources of cultural heritage or value, cultural heritage value or interest, and recommends no further archaeological assessment within the development envelope. However, should any below grade works occur outside of the development envelope, the property retains its potential and so should be assessed further. These conclusions of both reports are included as conditions of the recommendation that you have before you. And subject to these conditions, the application can be considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the county official plan. Then the final test is whether the application maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. So the subject property is zoned shoreline residential and environmental protection within the zoning bylaw of the township. The application proposes no development within the environmental protection zone. Within the bylaw, section 5.1.1 of the general provision states that accessory buildings, structures, or uses are permitted where there is a principal structure or building in existence on the lot. So within the shoreline residential zone, a residential dwelling is a permitted use, and a detached garage is a permitted accessory use to a residential dwelling. However, as the applicants have an existing dwelling on their adjacent property, they don't have any intention to build a second dwelling on the subject property, and so no intention to build a principal dwelling. The applicants, however, state that to build the detached garage on their adjacent property is not ideal because of issues it would create with non-compliance with the provisions of the SR, the Shoreline Residential Zone, or potential safety issues on Grey Road 1, as I mentioned, and as are discussed in more detail in the report. So for that reason, they are proposing instead to locate their detached garage accessory on the adjacent lot and on the subject property. The proposed garage and driveway are otherwise compliant with the provisions of the zoning bylaw. So for these reasons, it can be considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. And in that way, it satisfies all 4 tests for a minor variance. So it's recommended that as the application has satisfied all 4 tests of Section 45 of the Planning Act, subject to the conditions included in the recommendation, it's recommended for approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know that the applicant is on the call or maybe in person, but I'm happy to answer more.
I saw an agent lurking there, so I thank you for your report, and I'll ask for the applicant or their agent to come forward. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. Mr. Davidson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Ron Davidson. I am not Brian Anderson, like it says in your screen. I'm not an older, uglier version. I showed up here for the thinking the meeting was in person, and Brian was good enough to let me in. I feel like this was back in like when I was 7, and I got invited to a birthday party, and I showed up, and it was a joke, and I've probably suffered since. Okay, I'll continue. I shall be very brief. Marilyn did a great job in summarizing what. So I represent Lisa Ireland and Rob Palmer. They live across the road on a waterfront lot. It's a really nice lot with a really nice house on it, but it's also a small lot. And the little shed, the house, the septic system, the well take up a lot of property. There clearly is not garage. At the same time, and I can attest to this because I was there, there's a very steep driveway that you can park on now. And I think without a 4-wheel drive, you'd never be able to back up and out of there onto the county road in the wintertime with any amount of snow or ice on driveway. So they want to build across the road. They have no intentions of using the garage for any other purpose. It's just to park their cars to get them out of the elements. You heard Marilyn say that we had to do an archaeological assessment and an environmental impact study. So the clients have been working on this for about a year and a half. So we're finally at the point where hopefully tonight we get a. There's no impact whatsoever on this. I mean, nothing would preclude a future owner from, building a house or adding a residential unit on the side of the garage if they wanted to do that. Of course, they would need an archaeological assessment and an environmental impact study if they go beyond the study area. But other than that, yeah, there's no impact on the neighbor. It's just it's basically this garage is an extension of a residential use across the road, and it seems to make good sense. Mr. Chair, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Davidson. There are no members of the public registered to provide any comment. I'll now call upon members of the public who may wish to make a comment on the application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. I don't see anybody speaking up. I'll just wait one more second and have a final call for any comment. Seeing none, I'll turn to my committee member colleagues. Are there any points raised by the planner, applicant, or public that, well, there was no comments from the public. Any points raised by the planner or the applicant that the committee wishes to respond to? Committee member Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, and a question to the planner or to Mr. Davidson. I have no problems with the lot, but as we know, residential lots are hard to come by in the shoreline residential area. Has there been any consideration in the site plan for the siting of a residence should that land get sold or transferred to a subsequent purchaser?
I guess I should, that would be directed at me. I don't think Marilyn would know the answer to that question. It really depends, I suppose. There's a building envelope, and if they can build the house within that building envelope, they would be fine. I can only speculate that there wouldn't be any issue if, like, they'll need to, like I said, they'll need to revisit their environmental impact study and their archaeological assessment. Make the assumption if they didn't find anything in the first 30 or 40 meters of the site in terms of archaeological matters, that if they went back another 10 meters to enlarge the building envelope to allow for a house to be built, probably wouldn't find anything there as well. The environmental impact study didn't find anything on the adjacent lands of concern. His job was to focus solely on a building envelope to fit the garage in. But again, so in my mind, the door's certainly wide open to allow for a house to be built. But that wasn't taken into consideration now because the owners have no intentions of building a house.
So the existing, through you, Mr. Chairman, the existing building envelope has not been considered for the addition of a house should it be needed. A house would have to go through some subsequent EIS tree preservation plan to assess whether it would be capable.
It would if the building envelope was extended further west than the current development envelope.
Yeah, not to prolong this, Mr. Chairman, but it looks like the garage orientation is, okay, I'm going to say the doors look like they're facing south, or are they facing to the east?
South.
So to put a house up against those doors, it would be almost impossible.
Yeah, unless they went upstairs. I mean, there's nothing to preclude them from putting us, if they cared to do this, subject to compliance with the building code, building up and putting a residential unit upstairs.
Other than the height restriction that would be in the zoning bylaw.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further questions from the committee members? Seeing none. So if there is no further discussion, I'll now call the vote on the motion as presented. All those in favor? That recommendation is carried. If there's no further discussion, I'll now call for an adjournment of this public hearing. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by committee member Glenn, seconded by committee member Ladresse. All those in favor? That is approved.
Thank you.
We have
folks.
thank you.
Thank you.
We have no unfinished business, so the date of our next regular meeting is the Committee of Adjustment. We'll meet as regularly scheduled on April 15th, 2025 at 5 p.m. And if there is no further meeting, I will now call for an adjournment of this meeting. All those in favor? Moved by Committee Member Glenn, seconded by Committee Member Ladresse. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Thanks very much, folks, and have a good evening.
Night, everyone.